So first up today, we are very privileged to be joined by Valdemar, CEO of Harkila and Seeland, and you're visiting from Copenhagen.
Yep.
So I suppose the first question to ask you is the English weather. What do you think? As bad as they say?
Well, actually it's pretty nice weather these days, but I know that you guys have had quite a lot of rain over the past couple of months, which I think for you is bad, but as a seller of waterproof clothes, I think it's fantastic. So I'm really, really happy about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is this your first time at the Stalking show?
It is, yeah.
Yeah. And what do you think so far? How does it compare to shows back home?
I think it's slightly smaller than other shows that we see, but I think it's also more condensed with people more relevant to the stalking business. I think you see shows being, I would say, watered out by exhibitors not so relevant for the industry, and I think the organizers are trying to get in more exhibitors, make more money that way, rather than making it relevant for the people actually attending it. And I think this seems, for what I've seen so far, it seems very relevant for people going stalking, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of the sort of products that you've got coming out, I know Seeland have just announced a big sort of new collection. Is there anything in particular special that you want to sort of talk about and tell us about?
Yeah, I think I don't necessarily want to go into product details because we've so much good stuff coming out, and both from Seeland and Harkila. But it is true, we've done a really big effort in getting the Seeland brand back in people's mind. I think we've had a couple of years where it's been going down a little bit, and I don't know for what reason. I spoke to many of the retailers, and they said, well, it was selling really well, and then for whatever reason, it just stopped selling as much. So we've really done a lot to improve on the brand, to improve on the product, to improve on the fabric, and basically just go out and make Seeland the brand that it used to was. I think it's very important when we talk about the whole way that we develop within the company. So Outfit International is the mother company of the two brands, and whether we develop for Harkila or we develop for Seeland, it's very important for us that we try to stay true to being the best in the category that we're doing. So for Harkila, it's about being always being the best in everything that we do. We choose the best materials, we choose the best suppliers, we go out of our way to make the best products. And by doing that, obviously we can never be the cheapest. But we do the same for Seeland, but just to maintain within the price range. So we're trying always to be the best of what we can be within the market that we're looking towards.
Yeah, absolutely. And are there kind of particular products that are more kind of leaning towards the UK, or are there products that you've developed particularly for the UK market that you think are sort of completely different from something that you might use over in Denmark?
Well, I think our new hillside range, which is basically tweed in the Seeland range, it's something new. We haven't done tweed in Seeland for many years. We're picking that back up, and it is very oriented towards the UK, obviously. We're also coming out with a new range called the Tracks. The Track set. It's I was just speaking to one of my colleagues, and as he said, it's just a good all-day gamekeeper kit where it's hard wearing. It's the fabric is not Cordura, but it's very close to Cordura, so it's very strong, and you can just use it outside all day for years to come. And that's a very UK oriented set, and it's all really well over here. Actually, it's almost completely sold out to the retailers as it is right now. So
And so a question from me is I would say when I first started using Harkila, I don't know, like 7-10 years ago, there wasn't any camouflage in the range, certainly for like deer stalking clothing, but that seems to be sort of becoming more and more of a feature in terms of that lineup, and some of the patterns you've got are really, really cool. Was that something that was driven by sort of requests from hunters in Europe or America or here in the UK, or like what started that sort of introduction to camouflage?
Well, I think we introduced the Axis camouflage in Harkila for 7 years ago, roundabout, and I think it was driven from the fact that the existing camouflage, they're all American, they're all catered towards the American market, and I think they've been watered out a little bit. So if you take the Real Tree camo, for example, it's everywhere, and it's being used in expensive products, in cheap products, in car products, in whatever have you. And I think the hunting industry really needed something that was catered for the European market for hunting in Europe. So we actually worked with an American, a Canadian brand to create this camouflage. We spent years in doing that. They came to Europe and they were out looking at the vegetation and the colors and all of that. So it took quite a long time to develop this camouflage. But we also have to say that it's the best camouflage in the market, and it's been really, really well received.
Yeah.
And I think once you have a camouflage that people can, and there's no fashion in the hunting industry, but there is fashion in the hunting industry. So I think once people can see a camouflage that they can identify themselves, they don't look like army people. You see in the former Eastern European countries, people would be going hunting in former military clothing and stuff like that. But all of a sudden, they don't want to do that anymore. They also want to look cool when they go hunting. And for example, in mainland Europe, bow hunting is becoming more of a thing. So you also need to be very diligent about what it is, what you look like when you're out in the nature. Leave no trace, as we say. So it's basically you want to be out there without disturbing the nature. And it's kind of fundamental to get close to the animals. In the US, you see that, well, at least 5-6 years ago, 90% of all the products being sold were camouflage and 10% were solid. And in Europe, it was the other way around. So 10% were camouflage and 90% were solid colors. Well, that's changing now, and we're seeing a lot more camouflage being sold. And we are expanding on the camouflage, for example. So we came out with our forest camouflage, but we are doing snow camouflage, we're doing mountain hunter camouflage. One of the new products in Harkila is our Noctics. So night hunting is becoming a thing. I think there's a lot of people spending a lot of money on thermal scopes, and people want to go out and be in the night. And again, leave no trace, blend in with the nature, being out there without being seen. You can do that with the Noctics camouflage. So there's a lot of opportunities in camouflage.
Absolutely, and you sort of spoke about style a little bit there. A question from me, as many people I'm sure in this country would have been very pleased to see a lot of Harkila in the most recent Gentleman series from Guy Ritchie, with Vinnie Jones sort of being a very, very, very good ambassador for the brand. Absolutely. On that. Yeah. I thought it was amazing that he was able to wear all of the Harkila stuff within such a kind of tightly refined series like Guy Ritchie, because he's got such a sort of artistic vision, and all of his clothing and wardrobe and everything has to be really within his sort of his artistic vision. So it was really good to see that the sort of style of Harkila was to that level that it was able to be in one of the biggest sort of TV series of the time at the minute. How important is sort of style to Harkila versus sort of functionality and form? How much emphasis do you put on the other? And also, have you had much interest in have you had a pick up in interest since the release of The Gentleman on Netflix? Has it boosted sales at all?
Well, your first question, how much emphasis do we put to function and style? And of course there's a lot of style, but our main priority is the functionality, and it's the technologies. And with that also comes the style. Yeah. And I think it's important that we acknowledge that hunting as a sport is probably the oldest sport in the world. I know people are saying, bicycling, that's old, because one of the first bicycle races were organized back in 1860 or something like that. So bicycling, very old sport. No, you've gone hunting as a sport with the nobles and with the kings and for thousands of years. So there's so much tradition in going hunting, and we need to be able to acknowledge that tradition while also developing the business with the functionalities and the technologies and all that. So it's very important for us that we kind of do both things. And with that, the functionality, the technology, but also the style has to go hand in hand, because there is a certain codex of how you dress on the different hunts. Yeah. And your second question, have we seen an uplift? Absolutely, yes. I mean, just when it was released, I got text messages from people all over the world, from Canada, from the US, from Belgium, from Germany, from everywhere, even South Korea, that know that I'm involved with Harkila, and said, I just watched The Gentleman. Wow, are you well represented there? I said, absolutely. So I spoke with Vinnie, And I said, but it seemed like this character, this role, was actually written for you. Yeah. And he said it was. It was. I think Guy Ritchie wanted to work with Vinnie Jones, and I think he kind of wrote the role to fit Vinnie. Yeah. And Vinnie is, I mean, his style and what he does is very just up the Harkila alley. Yeah. So I think it just came naturally, and I think it fits in really well. And also the fact that a lot of the other characters are also using classical outfits, but not being Harkila. So it's not too much. It's I think it's very very well done.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's been a massive interest. Have we seen an uplift in sales? I think the retailers will. I think people will come in and see. I've seen the Vinnie. Can I buy the Vinnie Jones look? But we've definitely seen an increase on our social media and our websites and all of that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's something I really like about the Harkila and the Seeland brand is that it's clothing that you can wear, anywhere you like in the field, and it's so rugged and dependable. But then it doesn't look out of place if you want to go to a restaurant or to a pub or something. You've got some really stylish bits in the range that I will often wear to work or to meetings, or and it's all sort of so multi-purpose from something like that. So
and even if you take our new Mountain Hunter camouflage that came out last year, it's very fashionable. I mean, there's a lot of people wearing camouflage in fashion. Yeah. And I was skiing in Austria this winter, and I took a couple of photos because there's a lot of people wearing, whether it's Blaze camo or it's our Mountain Hunter camo, not our products, but then it's from Gore-Tex from North Face or other ski brands that are actually using the same type of camouflage. So it's very fashionable. But mind you, this is not why we're doing it. Of course, we're doing it to cater for the hunting market needs. One of the ways that we're developing is, and it's very important for us, because when we go into a new range, when we go into something, as I said, we really want to be the best, or we aspire to become the best. So when we went into the Mountain Hunter clothing, for example, we don't know much about mountain hunting in Denmark, to be honest. Our highest peak is 174 meters high, so that's pretty much just a small hill. So how would we know anything about mountain hunting, right? So we called in 3 experts that are all mountain hunting. It's all they do, down in Austria and in France. And we brought them in. I said, bring in your gear, bring in your needs, bring in all your know-how, and help us create the best mountain hunting gear that you have. And one of the things I was quite surprised, they all brought a scale. It's the first thing they took out of their backpack was a scale. How much does it weigh? And this is something. So just by working with those experts, and then obviously getting it out, getting it tested afterwards with them up in the heights, actually makes sure that when I can sit here and say we do make the best products out there, it's because it's being created together with the best experts out there. Yeah.
So that's really interesting that you as a company don't necessarily pretend to have all the expertise inside. Actually, you might go out and sort of find expertise to help develop a product, but before you even get to that stage, so say you're at the concept stage in terms of, okay, we want to develop a Mountain Hunter product, where does that concept or desire to create that concept come from? Is that someone in Harkila, or do you go down and sit down with kind of a panel of hunters and go, right guys, what is it you need from us? Where does the initial idea come from? Or is it a mixture of everything?
Yeah, it is a mixture of everything, and we're trying to make a very structured idea generation process. But a lot of the time it also just comes from the market, and obviously a lot of the people within the company are hunters, and they're very passionate hunters, and a lot of the people that we surround ourselves with are very passionate hunters. So and everybody's really, really good in bringing ideas back and say, I was out and I needed this or I needed that. So Harkila was originally founded 40 years ago. So we have our 40th anniversary next year in the collaboration with Gore-Tex as well. And it all originated from our founder Kjell Lennartson, which is a Swedish guy. Him and his dad was vivid moose hunters. So that was basically what they did. There was farmers as well, and they were breeding moose hunting dogs, but they went moose hunting. He even has in his contract, he still works with the company, right? So he even has in his contract that he needs to get September and October off to go moose hunting. That's kind of his thing. So he ventured out 40 years ago, being an entrepreneur, and said, I need to I need to come up with a solution, because when mooses have really good ears, so you need to be very quiet to get close up to the moose to get the kill. So they were all wearing waxed pants and high pile fleeces, because it's very silent fabric. But they were soaking wet when they came back. So he needed to find a solution to that. And back in the 80s, 1985, all membranes would make as much noise as a plastic bag. So there was no solution to it. So he called up Gore-Tex, and they started working together to kind of find this solution. How do we, with finding the right materials and brushed tricot, putting a membrane, developing a membrane which is more silent to that, how can we actually help the hunter go out and stay warm and dry? And particularly in Sweden, where you get temperatures way below freezing, it's also a matter of staying alive, basically. So he solved this problem, and that's kind of our approach to it. So we want to solve the problems that you face out there, and people get in all kinds of situations, and they face all kinds of problems, and we're like, okay, is there any way that we can help solve that problem with our technology and innovation?
And I think that's a real advantage with some of your employees being hunters as well, because I won't name them, but two of your employees came over and were hunting muntjac and fallow with me a few weeks ago. And it was really interesting, because I think for them the conditions and the environment that they hunt in at home compared to what we do here is quite, in some circumstances, quite different. And they were looking at the ways that Harry and I were using the Harkila and Seeland products and going, well actually if we did this, that and the other, would that be better? And you were going, actually yeah, it would. And it was really interesting to see that like generation of ideas and tweaks within the company from your own employees, which I think is really special.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So another thing that we did, we actually did it last year, but this is something that will last for years and years. We did a whole relaunch of our footwear, because one thing is that we're doing clothing, but our footwear range, to say the least, didn't have the greatest reputation in the market. And to be honest, we hadn't done the job very well. We did it really well with the clothing, but we kind of forgot to take our own medicine on the footwear. So what we did was we relaunched the whole footwear range. We took out all the models. We got people from Gore-Tex. We got people working with Echo, the Danish footwear company. We got people working with Viking, the Norwegian footwear company, Viking Footwear, and then a couple of our own hunters. And we put them all together for a year and a half to come up with the best hunting footwear that we could do. And then we changed the supplier from China to Italy. And the Italians are really good at making footwear as well. So we kind of brought all of that together. And again, I think it's just a testament to the fact that we say, if we're doing it, if it's worth doing right. So that's kind of our core philosophy.
Yeah. It's really good, and that as a user of your products, and I'm not just saying this because you're sat here, it does show in terms of the number of times I put on, say, a Harkila jacket or trousers, and you reach for one of the pockets and you go, that's in exactly the right place, the right angle, it's got the slips for bullets inside the pocket, and you're like, that has been done sort of absolutely amazing. Yeah, it's a real testament. Yeah.
I think our biggest problem is that our products last too long. but again, this is something I think everybody's talking about it right now, right? So CSR, what is that? And we know from the industry, because I think there's a lot of greenwashing going on out there. There was a lot of talks about reusing plastic bottles to create high pile fleeces and all of that. And I think people learn that that's not the way forward, because you're spending more energy crushing up the water bottles to actually make fleeces. But what we know from the textile industry is actually that the longevity of the product is the key. Because you can never talk about a sustainable piece of clothing, because it's never going to be sustainable. It can be bad or less bad, but producing clothes is always bad for the environment. So you can never do anything which is good. But what you can do is you can minimize the impact that you have. So for example, we know that when you produce clothing, 71% of all the greenhouse gases are emitted before you actually ship it off to the country where it belongs. So in the whole production process, 71%, and that's from production, it's energy used in creating fabric, in dyeing, in electricity, all of that, 71%. Only 3% of the greenhouse gas emissions comes from transportation, for example. 3% comes from retailing, so the electricity and the heat and stuff like that you use for retailing, and 20% comes from the usage. So when we wash it in the washing machine, we dry it in the tumble dryer and all that. So the best thing that we can do, and funnily enough, that's what we've done for 40 years on Harkila, is actually to make products that last longer. Because if you can prevent that the hunter needs to buy a new piece of clothing, even for a year or 2 years or 3 years, the impact, the 71% impact, is a lot better reducing that than trying to reduce transportation and reduce the way that you're using it. So of course we can help the users, the consumers, educate them how should you wash your product. Never wash them over 30 degrees. Always remember to tumble dry them because that will help the membrane. But don't do it too often, do it once a year. Yeah, there's no need to wash and tumble dry your clothes every time you come home. If you come home with a kit that's full of blood, yes, wash it maybe at 40 or 60 degrees. But if you're just out there wearing it regularly, don't wash it. So that's kind of what we can do. But creating long-lasting products, that's basically what we've done for 40 years and will. So when I say it's our biggest problem, it's actually also our biggest advantage.
Do you find that your consumers are more having more of a demand now for a product that has a high sustainability credential? Is that something that's coming through in the sort of feedback you're getting from customers?
Absolutely, and it is. I think people are becoming much more aware of it.
Yep.
But I think the issue is that people don't really comprehend it. So we're talking about sustainability, but as I said, clothing can never be sustainable. It can be less or more bad, but it can never be sustainable. So people will come in and say, is this product sustainable? Yes, it's sustainable because we don't air freight it, we ship it by boat. But as I just told you, the whole shipping is only 3%.
Yeah. It's a bit of a misnomer, isn't it, that travel actually is a big portion of the greenhouse gases from products, because shipping is incredibly efficient, a way of moving products around the world.
Absolutely.
I would until you said that, was it 71% is the actual product itself, is in the manufacturing of it. I would never, if you'd asked me to guesstimate, I would never have estimated it to be that high.
No.
I would have said that was the transport, the shipping, getting it, I would have put it entirely the other way around, that was what it was to get it to the consumer.
But that's because, and exactly what you say, Harry, it's because people have the understanding that traveling is bad for the environment, and it is.
Yep.
Me flying to Birmingham, that is a cost to the environment. But we are not flying products home, we're shipping them on boats, and boats are a very, well, it's not a very green way, but it's a greener way,
Yeah.
absolutely. So, and I think it's very important. So when we, for example, when we start talking about can we help people to reuse the products? So can we facilitate a way that even if you want a new jacket and your old Pro Hunter jacket, 5-year-old, is still very valuable, it still does the job. Can you sell that off somewhere so somebody else can use that and you have a chance to buy a new one because there's a new model coming out and we all want to look fresh, right? People will immediately ask, but if you start doing that, are you not shipping products back and forth? So let's say that you would have to ship your old Pro Hunter jacket back to Denmark. We would freshen it up and we would fix all whatever is with it, and then we'll ship it out to a new customer. But doesn't that take a lot of shipping? Well, maybe it does, but if I can extend the longevity of the product, maybe 2 or 3 years, and only adding, let's say, 10% to the shipping, well, the overall shipping emission is 3%, so now it's 3.3%. So it's such a limited impact compared to what we actually can do by extending the longevity of the product.
So is that something that you're going to be offering, sort of refurbished clothing, selling it sort of on a pre-loved, used basis? Is that?
Yeah, and this is something that we haven't talked about yet, but we are looking at how can we get that set up in order to actually help consumers to send in their old products and buy new products and help that longevity of the product basically. And of course there's an issue because you want to make sure that the products are still in very good condition. So we need to physically take it in and check it and look at it and make sure that it is in a good enough condition to sell it on. But
approved used sort of
something like that. Yeah.
So, and this is something again I learned when your two guys came over and came hunting with me, was I didn't realise that putting your hunting clothes in the tumble dryer helped to improve the waterproofness, providing you don't do it every single time like you said, because the heat sort of tightens up that membrane. It was something I'd never known before, and the reason I asked them was I said, if you've got something that's it's quite old, it's becoming a bit less waterproof, what do? Do you spray it with, or try and wash it with like a re-waterproofing agent? And they were like, no, you just put it in the tumble dryer and it'll go back to new basically. And it was something I had no idea about, and I imagine a lot of our listeners will be quite interested in.
Yeah. And it is something, and there's a lot of information about this on our webpage, obviously. So if you go into Harkila, for example, we have the whole Explore area, where you'll find everything from how to sharpen your knife to maintain your boots to recipes on all different kinds of game that you shoot. But there you will also learn about how to treat your Vortex products and what you need to do to actually refresh the membrane and all. So there's a lot of information out there, and yeah.
It's really interesting. Well, thank you very much for joining us, Valdemar. I appreciate
Absolutely.
You're a very busy man. We don't want to take up all the time that you're here, both at the show and in the UK.
Thanks for having me.
For coming on.
Absolutely. Thanks. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.